The first automated paycheck transfer on this channel's test account hit a wall 3 weeks in. The transfer amount was set too high. A quarterly insurance bill got forgotten. The account overdrafted 3 days before the next deposit. 9 p.m. outside a Walgreens, staring at a declined transaction on a screen that said, insufficient funds. That was the lesson that shaped everything after. Automation without a formula is just a faster way to run out of money. Today, the formula that came out of that mistake. It takes 30 minutes to set up, and once it's running, it replaces every financial decision between paychecks. Yesterday, we built the pyramid, the order, where the money goes and why. Today is the wiring. I'm Warren, and this is the part where the architecture stops being a concept and becomes a machine that runs whether anyone is paying attention or not. In a one-bedroom apartment in Atlanta on the second floor of a building off Peachtree, a dental hygienist named Nina was getting paid every other Friday. Take home, about $1,300 per check. By Monday, roughly half of it was already spoken for. Rent had auto-drafted, the phone bill cleared, gas was on the wild credit card. By Wednesday, the balance in her Wells Fargo checking account would hover around $300. By the following Thursday, the day before the next paycheck, it was often under $100. She described the cycle like this. The money arrives, the money leaves, and somewhere in between she tries to grab a piece of it for savings. Most months, there's nothing left to grab. That description could have come from any of the people in this series. The compliance officer in Chicago, Marcus in Dallas, Ray in Columbus. The language is always the same. Something about the money moving too fast, about the gap between intention and execution, about the feeling that earning more wouldn't actually solve it because the system would just absorb the increase. And they're right. Without a mechanism, more income just means more spending. The payday routine is the mechanism. The behavioral economists who studied this called it the last dollar problem. The dollar that's supposed to be saved is also the dollar that's most exposed to being spent, because it sits in the same account as everything else and has no label on it. The solution isn't better budgeting, it's separation at the source. The fix is mechanical, not motivational, and it takes exactly 3 components. Component 1, the formula. Before automating anything, the split has to be defined. The most common framework is 50, 30, 20. 50% of take-home goes to needs: rent, utilities, insurance, groceries, transportation. 30% goes to wants: dining, entertainment, subscriptions, clothing. 20% goes to the building side: savings, debt payoff, investing. For Nina, on $1,300 per check, that's roughly $650 to needs, $390 to wants, and $260 to building. Those numbers felt tight to her. She told me the 30% for wants seemed high and the 20% for building seemed impossible. I told her to start with 15% and work up. The exact percentage matters less than the mechanism. A 15% automated split that runs every 2 weeks beats a 20% intention that never executes. Component 2, the split deposit. This is the part most people don't know exists, and it's the single most important piece of financial infrastructure available to anyone with a job that pays via direct deposit. Nearly every employer's payroll system allows an employee to split a direct deposit into multiple accounts. Not one account that the person then manually divides. Multiple accounts, each receiving a predetermined amount before the money ever touches the checking account. Nina's HR department at the dental office used ADP for payroll. She logged into ADP on a Thursday evening from her apartment, navigated to the direct deposit section, and set up 3 destinations. Destination 1, $650 to her Wells Fargo checking for bills and spending. Destination 2, $200 to her Marcus High Yield Savings for the emergency fund. Destination 3, the remainder, roughly $450, to her Ally checking, which she'd linked to her Fidelity Roth YRA. The whole setup took about 12 minutes. And here's what happened in those 12 minutes that matters more than any number. The fundamental relationship between Nina and her paycheck changed. Before the split, her paycheck was one number in one account, and every dollar in that account competed with every other dollar for attention. Rent competed with savings, groceries competed with investing, entertainment competed with the emergency fund. After the split, there was no competition. Each dollar had an address before it arrived. The checking account contained only what was available for spending. The savings account contained only the emergency fund. The Ally account contained only the building money. No negotiation, no willpower. No guilt about spending what's in checking because the building side was already handled at the source. This is the same principle from every video in this series. The surgeon's automated transfer, Marcus's fidelity contribution. Jess's subscription audit freeing up the gap, Ray's 401k enrollment. The mechanism is always the same. Move the money before the brain registers it as available. Split deposit is the most powerful version of this mechanism because it happens at the payroll level before the checking account even receives the funds. Component 3. The automatic transfer chain. The split deposit sends money to the right accounts. The transfer chain sends money from those accounts to the right destinations within those accounts. Nina's Marcus savings held her emergency fund. No transfer needed, it just accumulated. Her Ally checking, the account receiving the remainder, had an automatic transfer set to the first of each month. $200 to her Fidelity Roth IRA invested in FSKAX. The rest sat in Ally as a buffer for irregular expenses, things like car maintenance, clothing, and gifts that don't happen every paycheck but happen every quarter. The chain works like plumbing. Paycheck splits at the source. Each stream flows to a designated tank. From each tank, smaller pipes carry the water to its final destination. Once the pipes are connected, they don't need adjustment. They just run. The only time Nina touches the system is the 90-day check-in, which I'll get to in a minute. Here's what the first month looked like for Nina. Paycheck 1 arrived on a Friday. $650 went to Wells Fargo. $200 went to Marcus. The remainder went to Ally. She checked her Wells Fargo balance on Saturday morning while making coffee in her kitchen, standing at the counter, phone in one hand, mug in the other. $650. Not $1,300. For a moment, she said, it felt like something had gone wrong, like money was missing. Then she remembered, it's not missing. It's somewhere else. Somewhere she built. That cognitive adjustment, the brain accepting a lower checking balance as normal, took about 2 weeks. By the second paycheck, the number felt right. By the third, she'd stopped checking the other accounts compulsively and started trusting that the system was running in the background. The urge to check faded the same way the urge to manually pay a bill fades once autopay is set up. The brain lets go of the task once it trusts the system to handle it. That trust doesn't come from willpower. It comes from repetition. 2 or 3 cycles of watching the money arrive in the right places, untouched, automatically. Miami. And the brain stops worrying about it. But here's the part of Nina's story that makes it real, not just clean. Month 2, she got a flat tire. The repair cost $180. She pulled the money from her Ally buffer and paid it. No credit card, no overdraft, no panic. 2 months earlier, that same flat tire would have gone on a Capital One card at 22% interest and sat there compounding for months. This time it came from a designated account and disappeared without disrupting anything else. She said the feeling wasn't excitement, it was absence. The absence of the panic she used to feel when something unexpected cost money. If you've ever sat in a repair shop doing mental arithmetic on whether the fix will overdraft the account, you know what that panic feels like. And you know what its absence would be worth. Month 3 was harder. A coworker's birthday dinner cost more than expected. Nina dipped into the Ally buffer and then, the following week, skipped the Roth transfer because the buffer felt too low. She sat on her couch that Sunday evening and felt like the whole thing had fallen apart. Like skipping one transfer meant the system was broken and she'd failed. This is the part that matters most, because it's the part where most people quit. The system didn't break. She used the buffer for exactly what it's designed for, and she made a judgment call on the Roth transfer that was reasonable given the balance. The system includes flexibility on purpose. The buffer exists to absorb shocks. Skipping one transfer isn't failure. Stopping the system entirely is failure. She resumed the transfer the following month. The Roth balance barely noticed the gap, and the lesson she took from it was the same lesson every person who follows this routine eventually learns. The system survives interruptions. What it doesn't survive is abandonment. A flat tire is a bump. Turning off the transfers is a decision to go back to the default. Those are different things. The 90-day check-in is the only manual step in the entire routine, and it takes about 15 minutes. Every 3 months, pull up all 3 accounts, check whether the emergency fund has reached the target. 1 month of expenses as a minimum, 3 months as the goal. Check whether the Roth contributions are on pace. Check whether the ally buffer is recovering after any irregular expenses. And ask one question: can the building percentage go up by 1 or 2 points? Nina started at 15%. At the 90-day mark, she moved to 17. At 6 months, 19. The increases were small enough that she didn't feel them, but large enough that over a year, her building rate nearly doubled. If you run this check-in on the same day every quarter, the whole process takes less time than an oil change. And it's worth more than most raises. Here's why this routine works when budgets don't. A budget is a plan. A routine is a system. A plan requires daily decisions. A system requires one decision, made once, and then it runs. Every budget study in behavioral economics shows the same pattern. People follow budgets for about 6 to 8 weeks before abandoning them. Not because they lack discipline, because decision fatigue erodes compliance over time. Every purchase becomes a negotiation. Is this in the budget? Can this be afforded? Should money move from one category to another? That negotiation happens dozens of times a day, and eventually the brain gives up and defaults to spending. The person feels like a failure. The budget gets blamed. But the budget was never the problem. The problem was asking a human brain to make 40 financial micro-decisions a day and expecting perfect compliance every single time. The payday routine eliminates that negotiation entirely. The money is split before it arrives. The transfers happen before the brain engages. The checking account contains only what's available for bills and discretionary spending, and whatever's in there is safe to spend without guilt, because the building side has already been handled at the source. There's no tracking app, no spreadsheet to update, no category to check. The architecture runs in the background while the person lives in the foreground, and that's the part that makes it sustainable. It doesn't require ongoing attention. It requires one evening of setup and then one check-in every 90 days. Everything in between is automatic. Nina at 6 months, emergency fund, 1,200, growing by 200 every 2 weeks, on pace to hit 3 months of expenses within a year. Roth YRA, 1,600 all in FSKAX, compounding quietly. Buffer, functioning, absorbing shocks without touching the credit card. Total building rate, 19% of gross income. On $41,000 a year, she didn't get a promotion. Didn't cut anything she cared about. She separated the money at the source and let the system do what systems do. The routine that Nina built on a Thursday evening in her apartment off Peachtree is the same routine from the opening of this video, the one that failed at the Walgreens parking lot when the formula was missing. The version that works, the version Nina runs, has the formula built in. Split at the source, automatic transfers, a buffer for the unpredictable, and a check-in every 90 days. The mechanism was always available. The formula is what made it work. If you haven't automated your paycheck yet, here's the sequence. Log into the payroll system tonight. Set up the split deposit with 3 destinations: bills, buffer, building. Set one automatic transfer from the buffer to your Roth IRA or brokerage account. Start at 15% for the building side. Run the 90-day check-in. And then stop thinking about it. The system doesn't need attention. It needs setup. 30 minutes of setup buys 30 years of compounding. If you don't set this up in the next 2 weeks, every paycheck between now and retirement follows the default. Money arrives, money leaves, nothing stays. That's not a plan. That's a leak with a schedule. And every month on that schedule is a month where the building side got 0, not because there wasn't enough, but because the money had no address. One detail worth circling back to. Nina's system runs on the same architecture that every person in this series built independently. The surgeon, Marcus, Jess, Daniela, Ray. Different incomes, different cities, same mechanism. Automated, invisible, running whether the person feels motivated or not. The routine from today is the final wiring. The pyramid told the money where to go. The routine makes sure it gets there. What comes next is the layer underneath. The rules that hold the whole system together when the unexpected happens and the numbers don't add up. The principles behind the plumbing, that's the next video.